Supreme Court's landmark ruling. How immigration enforcement just changed forever. The U.S. Supreme Court has just handed down a landmark decision, one that completely reshapes the way America handles immigration enforcement, deportations, and green card protections. This isn't just another case. It's a ruling that could redefine due process for millions of immigrants living in the United States today. So, what exactly did the court decide? How does it impact you or your loved ones? And what happens next? Let's break it all down clearly, because this ruling will affect families, long-term residents, and anyone currently facing deportation proceedings. What exactly happened? In a 6-3 ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a decision that directly targets how the government prioritizes and executes deportations. For years, the executive branch, meaning the president and immigration agencies like ICE and USCIS, had wide discretion to decide who could be deported and who could stay. That flexibility allowed administrations to set their own enforcement priorities, often focusing on criminal offenders while deferring action for long-term residents with clean records. But now, the court has made it clear, the government cannot bypass constitutional due process when removing someone from the country. Every deportation case must follow proper legal safeguards. In simple terms, this decision limits executive power and reinforces that even in matters of immigration, the Constitution still applies. What this means for immigrants. For immigrants, this ruling is a double-edged sword. It brings more protection, but also potential delays. On the positive side, those who have been living in the U.S. for years, working, paying taxes, and staying out of legal trouble will now have stronger legal protection before facing removal. Immigrants can no longer be deported abruptly or without a fair hearing. The ruling ensures that every individual has the right to defend themselves in court, to present evidence, show family ties, and prove community contributions before any deportation order is finalized. Families that have lived in America for decades now have a renewed sense of hope. Due process is no longer optional. It's a legal requirement. On the other hand, because the court is forcing agencies to review each case more carefully, the process will likely slow down significantly. Backlogs could grow as immigration courts and enforcement agencies adjust to the new legal framework. Still, for many long-term residents with clean records, this decision represents a rare moment of relief in a system long criticized for its speed and harshness. A game-changer for families. Perhaps the biggest impact will be felt by families separated or threatened by deportation. For years, mixed-status households, where one or more family members are undocumented, have lived in constant fear of separation. Under this ruling, that fear may finally ease. The court's decision makes it clear that families cannot be torn apart without legal review. If you've raised children in the U.S., built a life here, and avoided criminal offenses, the new protections could mean you have a stronger chance to stay together. Attorneys are already calling this decision a turning point for family unity in immigration enforcement. Now, every deportation attempt must pass constitutional standards before it can proceed, meaning no family can be separated overnight without due process. Who benefits the most? The ruling primarily benefits long-term immigrants with clean records. If you've lived in the U.S. for years, paid taxes, avoided trouble, and established roots, this decision gives you a much stronger defense. You now have a right to demand a fair hearing before removal, something not guaranteed under previous enforcement discretion. However, this ruling does not protect individuals with serious criminal records. Criminal deportations will remain a top priority for ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. But for millions of law-abiding immigrants, it brings a renewed chance to fight deportation orders and remain with their families. How enforcement will change. This Supreme Court decision forces major changes within America's immigration agencies. Departments like ICE, CBP, and USCIS will now have to update their policies, internal procedures, and enforcement priorities. Expect deportations to slow down as cases are reviewed under stricter due process requirements. Before this ruling, many removals were fast-tracked. Now, each case must go through a more transparent and legally sound process. Immigration officers will need to justify their decisions and document how due process has been followed. This adds oversight, transparency, and accountability to a system that has long been criticized for inconsistency. While enforcement will continue, particularly against those with criminal convictions, the era of silent deportations without hearings is coming to an end. The risks and challenges ahead. Now, let's be clear, this ruling is not without complications. Because agencies must now follow more steps to ensure fairness, delays and backlogs are inevitable. Immigration courts are already overwhelmed, and this ruling will only increase their workload. That means families awaiting deportation decisions may face longer periods of uncertainty. Some cases might stall for months or even years as the new legal standards are implemented. There's also concern that enforcement priorities could become unclear, leading to inconsistent outcomes from one region to another. Some courts may interpret the ruling more strictly, while others might move slower in adjusting to it. Still, immigration advocates believe that the short-term delays are worth it, because in the long run, this ruling ensures that constitutional rights are no longer ignored in deportation cases. What happens next? This Supreme Court decision is just the beginning. The ruling sets the foundation, but now the executive branch must adapt. ICE, CBP, and USCIS will have to revise training, rewrite enforcement manuals, and retrain officers to comply with the new requirements. We can also expect new lawsuits as both sides, immigrant advocates and government attorneys, test the limits of this decision in lower courts. Congress may also be pressured to pass new immigration legislation to align federal law with the court's interpretation. That could mean even more reforms, more oversight, and potentially new programs designed to balance fairness with security. In the months ahead, this ruling will likely become one of the most significant immigration decisions in recent history, shaping how due process and deportation intersect in the years to come. What this means if you're facing deportation. If you or someone you know is currently in removal proceedings, this decision is critical. You now have the legal right to demand a fair hearing, to challenge deportation orders, present evidence, and ensure your case is reviewed properly. Immigration attorneys are already advising clients to review their pending cases and check if their rights were violated under the old system. If so, you may be able to reopen your case under the new due process standards. For long-term residents, this ruling can mean the difference between removal and relief. If your record is clean and you've built strong community ties, you now have a powerful legal tool to stay in the country. Key takeaways. Let's summarize the biggest points from this ruling. 1. Due process is now mandatory in every deportation case. No more arbitrary removals. 2. Long-term residents with clean records gain stronger legal protections. 3. Families have a better chance to stay together and fight deportation. 4. Enforcement will slow down as cases undergo deeper legal review. 5. ICE, CBP, and USCIS must revise their policies to meet constitutional safeguards. 6. Delays and backlogs may grow, but fairness will improve. 7. More lawsuits and reforms are expected as the new system takes shape. Final thoughts. This Supreme Court ruling marks a historic shift in how the United States enforces immigration law. It doesn't stop deportations, but it changes how they're carried out, ensuring that fairness, transparency, and constitutional rights are respected. For many families and long-term immigrants, this ruling is a lifeline. It restores hope, fairness, and a chance to fight back against unjust removals. But it also marks the start of a complex new era, one where every agency, court, and lawmaker will have to navigate a new balance between enforcement and rights. America's immigration system has entered another turning point. And as this story continues to unfold, one thing is clear. Due process is no longer optional. It's the law. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to USA Alert Zone for real-time updates, legal insights, and full coverage of major immigration developments. Stay informed, stay prepared, and protect your rights. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next update.